The Deadhead is that person, wherever they turn up in society, that's looking for an adventure in America, you know, something to do that's not like what everybody else does, and a chance to get out and scare themselves a little. You know. This is, we're one of the last frontiers where you can go out and get scared, you know, and have a scary time of it, and maybe have a little trouble, but also find a lot of support and make a lot of friends, and that, you know, so it has its own energy, and they carry on quite nicely even without us. So it's a sub-society of some kind. I don't want to call it a counterculture, because that's not really what it is. It's really an expression of the kind of larger American picture, America as an interesting place to be in.
What is the Dead, or who are the Dead for me?
Well, they were the #1 touring band in the world.
The Grateful Dead started as a band in the mid-60s from bluegrass and jug band roots, but it evolved to be much more than the sum of its parts.
They pulled together an original sound that came out of the psychedelic music of the 60s. They were a San Francisco house band.
And discovered how to make rock and roll and jazz and funk and reggae and blues all be encapsulated in one insane experience.
And then they just kept on going through into the 70s, where they created all this other amazing original music. Went into the disco era, continued on into the 80s.
Their music has lasted way past the last show that they played as the Grateful Dead, when Jerry Garcia passed away in 1995.
We had answering machines then. We didn't have instant access to our handheld computers. There was a message from one of my old Deadhead buddies, and he said, like, still makes me want to cry. He said, you know, I know this must be a big day for you, you know, that Jerry died. And I was like, what are you talking about?
Jerry Garcia, the Grateful Dead guitarist who kept the counterculture of the 1960s, rocking and rolling right into the 90s, died today in California.
A big part of what the Grateful Dead did for the music scene in general was they created this community that's everlasting.
I think we were all grieving a huge loss, and you know, if you follow the Dead, you know that there's this thing that happens at shows where at some point everybody gets connected to the music together, and it's like all those hearts are beating as one. And I think that's the attraction for me. We're all connected to our common humanity, and to not know where that was going, I think it was really upsetting.
But it didn't stop there, you know, it didn't stop with Jerry leaving us.
When Jerry Garcia died 8 years ago, most people thought his band, the Grateful Dead, died with him. But the surviving members are back on tour.
The other members have gone on and continued the music.
You can say to the world,
The Dead's back. There was The Dead, there was Further, and different machinations. You know, it started to kind of, they were playing theaters, large theaters.
Once again, Dead and Company!
And I was like, oh my God, I have missed this, you know, like, it's back.
It kind of gave us another run at going on tour and listening to Grateful Dead music done right. And I think it was just a huge blessing that John Mayer jumped aboard with Bob.
I mean, this has been the most selfless experience of my life. They're not coming up and saying, you're awesome. They're coming up and they're saying, that was awesome. That experience was awesome. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you for taking me.
There's so many paths that the music has pushed people in.
Hundreds, if not thousands, of cover bands and tribute bands playing Grateful Dead music now.
When you think about it, it's like the Dead created open source music. They create these songs. The song is just a platform for you to explore. It's more, the Grateful Dead is a genre of music, more so than just a catalog of songs.
There's a million different ways you can play it. At the you know, nationally touring level, you've got two great examples in something like J-Rad versus Dark Star Orchestra, right? One is doing these show recreations and kind of hemming very close to what the Dead did, using the same equipment, same arrangements and all of that in a specific time period, in a specific show. Then you've got J-Rad, which, you know, plays the songs but does their own spin on it, you know, and both of those are valid.
The Grateful Dead community is very alive. I mean, especially in New England, you throw a rock and you'll hit a Grateful Dead cover band.
Everybody says you can throw a stone, hit a Grateful Dead cover band.
It never gets boring, it never gets old. There are so many like just uber talented musicians that will never be famous, but they can get up and play Grateful Dead music and make it their own and have a following in their local community or regionally.
When I was 10, I remember my dad played Terrapin Station. We were driving and the sun was shining on me, I remember feeling really warm and just like happy and being like lulled into this riff, you know, the Grateful Dead. I'm Tom Clancy and I play guitar and sing in Dead Meat. There was a Dead band night started at Maureen's Jazz Cellar in Nyack, and we were all in a band and we said, we can do this. And it was one of the first times we sang together. The three of us just were like, ah, and it was like this shining, happy moment. And it always felt very right for us to be playing this music together. As soon as we put it together, it just kind of took off and created a life of its own, where the band is bigger than our individual selves. You know, when we unite, it's like Captain Planet. When we unite, our powers are stronger together. It's amazing to be able to play the music of the Grateful Dead, and where we're living right now, you could joke that you could swing a stick and hit a Grateful Dead tribute band. There's just so many people playing the music. There's something special about the way people turn out for the music. As soon as you embrace the Grateful Dead tradition, people are coming out and they know how to engage in music, how to share a group experience, and how to just kind of have a good time and really rock with the tunes. I think the spirit of the improvisation that the Grateful Dead embodied really empowers musicians to find their own voices and their own sense of expression through the larger tradition. When we perform, a lot of times we get the feedback that people haven't heard the Grateful Dead before, but now that was really interesting and they're into it. And that's kind of an amazing thing to be kind of having them torch for a moment and be able to pass it to people. You never know how small things can have huge impacts in people's lives. So I think once you realize there's this greater community that you could just go be part of, and it's inclusive and accepting, I think that can be really empowering and touching for people. So we're humbled to perform the Grateful Dead music. It's amazing that it's even permitted in a society where ownership is such like a priority, you know, but it's cool. I mean, it's really amazing.
My name is Jay Blakesberg, and I live in San Francisco, California, and I take photographs with a camera. After I photographed the Grateful Dead in September of '78, I started photographing a bunch of different bands. I was a senior in high school at that point, and it was sort of my identity. You know, people wanted to look at the pictures that I took, and we'd make 8x10 prints in the darkroom in my mother's basement, and I'd give them to my friends, and they would thumbtack them to their bedroom walls, and I would thumbtack them to my bedroom walls. And you know, I really was just trying to create memorabilia for myself. There was a Grateful Dead fanzine called The Golden Road that was all through the 80s into the early 90s, and asked them if he'd be interested in looking at some photos I took of some Deadheads, and I sent over the proof sheets, and they loved them, and they published a 2-page spread. And I had already been published in Relics magazine a couple of times. Nowadays we're published every 30 seconds on social media, but back then, like, seeing a photograph that you love in print in your favorite magazine was like a really big deal. On 11/11/87, the free U2 concert in downtown San Francisco. That was my first assignment for Rolling Stone magazine. They had just announced it on the radio, so I was going to go there anyway and just take pictures. But I got this assignment from Rolling Stone magazine, and that was the first of 300 assignments I did for Rolling Stone over the next 30 years. It was important to document the stuff. We also really believed in what we were shooting and believed in the shows we were going to as being true cultural moments of importance, right? Historical moments. I definitely look at myself as a visual anthropologist, right? So anthropology being defined as the study of humankind. And like I said, I'm just shooting for memorabilia on my wall. But as I become a professional photographer and I'm getting assignments, yes, 100% I believe that it was important for me to document the cultural, historical aspect of what we're doing. And I've been saying for decades that my Grateful Dead archive will not be complete until Bob, Phil, Mickey, and Billy stop playing music. That's when that archive is complete, my Grateful Dead archive. There's this Grateful Dead 65 to 95 I shot from 78 to 95, and then there's this post 95 to today section of this historical record, right, post Jerry Garcia. It includes further the other ones, the Dead and Company. So all of these things are part of this Grateful Dead adventure, right? The Grateful Dead are bigger today than they've ever been in their entire career. And yes, we're in Boston and we're seeing Dead and Company, but we are part of the Grateful Dead experience. I'm not saying we're seeing the Grateful Dead because I don't want all these people on their computers to go crazy and say, this is not the Grateful Dead, Jerry Garcia died, 28 years ago. I'm saying this is the Grateful Dead experience and we are all part of it. I still shoot Deadheads dancing. I still document that cultural zeitgeist of the magic that happens between the band and the audience, right? And to me, it's a big part of our whole scene that I'm photographing. I mean, this has just been the grandest adventure that any individual can ask for, and I've gotten a front row seat with my camera and gotten to document all of this.
Hi, I'm Peter Shapiro. I'm a concert promoter and provider of live music fun times. So I own the Capitol Theater and we opened it in September of 2012, so almost 11 years ago. And there was a space, a lot of these old theaters were not built with like lobby bars. They were built to have one show a night, no set break, 90-minute vaudeville theater, one drink. Now we do these concerts, they're 2 sets, they're 4 hours, there's a 40-minute, there's just a lot of need for people to move around, have fun, have a drink, go to the bathroom. So we connected the Capitol to a stationery, what was a stationery store next door. And we were like, wow, we should make this a small 250 cap venue. And the Capitol Theater is Jerry Garcia's favorite theater.
There's a great poster down on the wall, and it's a quote from Garcia saying that the 2 best places to play were in New York, and then one was the Fillmore East, and the other was the Capitol here in Portchester.
So when bringing the Cap back, and I always knew it was the home of the Dead, when we decided and we got the ability to connect to the stationery store and build our own new room, it was from the beginning, it was like, oh, that should be Garcia's.
All around the walls, we have photos of Jerry, classic pieces of memorabilia, like relics of his old guitar and his briefcase that he used to carry around with him. And it's a place to carry on the torch of Jerry and the Grateful Dead. And so now we continue that tradition by having a weekly gathering of Dead fans where we have a Grateful Dead band play, a Jerry Garcia tribute band play. We'll have about 1 show per week dedicated to Jerry and the Grateful Dead.
It's really awesome to have a venue, and even more awesome to have a venue that breathes Grateful Dead music. Any kind of Dead music played in Garcia's or the Capitol, something that could be Dark Star Orchestra, it could be Joe Russo's Almost Dead, it could be Stella Blues Band, all these different Dead, Grateful Shred. You could go down the list, but something happens in the air when you start playing those notes and those Robert Hunter or Barlow lyrics. There's already been that magic there, so it's like sitting there already. I believe in this, that like, so it's easier to catch it again because it's already been there.
We love playing the Capitol. It has that magic. I mean, I never got to play at the Fillmore East, but this place is just magical. It sounds good, and it's just, the sight lines are good. There's just enough connection with the audience to make it a real fun place to play.
The music never fades. The Grateful Dead music, you can see it out there, you know, how many years they've been out, the fans. You could see a Dead show last night and then tonight and the next night, and there's something about the music, it just never really fades. It's always fresh and new, and I love it still.
Shakedown Street obviously gets its name after the Killer song, or actually does it? Which came first, the song or the shakedown?
When I was on Grateful Dead tour, full on by 1980, the parking lot scene was very chill. A couple people walking around with some t-shirts, like friends of mine that were 17, 18, 19, 20 years old. They'd stitch up a pair of beaded earrings and walk around and say, you know, who wants to buy earrings? $10, because the ticket was $9. And they'd sell one pair of earrings, have enough money to buy a ticket and get into the show. So as the 80s roll on, it slowly gets bigger. There's more bootleg merchandise. There's stuff that now has trademarks on it, grilled cheese and burritos and beer and water.
It was like a, what do you want to call it? It was this free market thing there. Everybody was out selling their merchandise, whether it was t-shirts or, you know, sandwiches.
There were just so many people, and so people were so eclectic and so different, and there was so much to see.
As you see here, we have Shakedown Street, which is the most, not really a name of the street, but this here is like the busiest place where you could get, let's see, where you could get mostly everything that Deadhead wants. Here.
Oh, what magical fairy tale is this? Like, oh, this is exactly what you hear, but you're like, no way that actually happens.
I remember walking down Shakedown Street when I was like 8th grade, and my dad being like, oh, that's marijuana, that's some funny smelling shit. And then I was kind of like, where am I? Like, there's this carnival going on, but it's not like the carnivals we had been to in the past.
My first Grateful Dead concert I ever attended, wandered around Shakedown Street the entire night, never went into the show. Just hung out in Shakedown Street and had the time of my life.
It morphed and grew and changed and expanded all through all the different incarnations.
Hey, I'm Helen Kennedy, aka Zaz Corp. I'm a Grateful Dead Artist of the Year in 2021, first female. And I've also done like a bunch of official posters for them. I've done like a Bristow poster this year for this tour. I'm a gig poster artist, so I do like work with like Fish and Primus and all those types of jam bands to create poster art.
What's happening, you guys? We're coming live from Shakedown Street. My name is J Rad. This is my wife, Starfire. We're over here selling grilled cheeses on lot, keeping the Grateful Dead legacy alive. Got to have your grilled cheese sandwiches.
So a lot of people will specifically make their bracelets or their stickers or their pins or whatever they're gonna sell, and that's what they're bringing on tour, and the sale of that is paying for these tickets and getting them from show to show.
Shakedown is just like a little city that appears full of deadheads.
Shakedown's the last American freedom, the place where you can set up yourself, do your own thing, be your own person. I think of it as home.
It moves fast, there's crowds, so it can be really enveloping and kind of amazing. There's, you know, maybe like the feeling you might get in a Turkish market or something. That's what I imagine. I've never been.
I make shirts. I do a lot of graphic design and illustrations, so I
illustrate and design these t-shirts. Screen printing through Studio 7s. They do a kick-ass job. Make some fun bumper stickers too.
I'm here at Shakedown, and mostly it's because I wrote this book called Who Are the Grateful Dead and Why Are They Following Me?, which was a monologue I did when I was an actor living in Los Angeles. And I had some free time on my hands. I was living in Europe. And so I put the monologue to my photography, kind of trippy, crazy stuff.
Shakedown Street has been a wonderful place for the community to gather, first of all, before and after concerts, and just talk to your friends and become friends with other folks who love the same music as you. But beyond that, it's been an incredible place for fans of the music to show off and amplify their creativity through art that they created. There's fantastic original artwork happening on Shakedown Street, and you can find that whenever you take a stroll down it.
The sounds of Shakedown. If you can capture that or hear that closer, there's like all the trinklets, and noises and people talking and like whoosh, whoosh. People calling, veggie burritos, grilled cheese.
Cold, ice cold.
It's got a great oral essence.
I really feel that at Shakedown, that's where the community really is in full force.
Again, surrounded by folks who were enamored with the same music and the same community.
Everybody is so kind, so generous. Like, I see people hugging like their family. Like, they wake up at 6 together, they go to bed at 3 a.m. together. So that's been really cool for me to see, and just kind of slow down a little bit and just kind of really appreciate like the simple things in life.
You can just say hi to anybody and have a conversation, and there's no expectation that it's going to be weird, or you can just talk to people, and that feels like a very American thing of the past that I don't feel like we have much anymore.
You can be walking down a random street in a city you've never been to and see somebody wearing something Grateful Dead, and you'll instantly be friends. Instantly. In fact, Sergio, who you interviewed earlier, we met him walking down the street in Sacramento. He was in a Dead shirt, Sergio was in a Dead shirt. We sat down and started talking to him and his wife, and now we've been friends for several years. Traveling around the whole United States together for 2 months. Yeah. By randomly meeting him on a street because they were both wearing Grateful Dead.
I was going to Playing in the Sand. It had been years of them doing this show, and I knew the type of people that would be there. I knew it would be 5,000 people just like me. And so I was like, I'm doing this solo. I'll find a roommate. This is all, the universe is working in my favor. I know it. From the very first moment that I was there, I was overwhelmed with positive energy. And there was all kinds of different, exchanges of people and meeting each other and giving each other hugs and giving each other and saying thank you. And it like enveloped us in this ball of energy, and it was just overwhelming to me. It was really just overwhelming to me. And so I was only home a day before I ended up getting super sick, and I equated it all to just losing all of that, stepping outside the bubble. I was like, I already missed these people. And the best that I had was their first name, where they were from, and then /pits in my phone is how people would end up in my phone. So when I got back, I decided that in the Facebook group for the Playing in the Sands, that I was just gonna put it out there that if anyone was coming to Saratoga and they had gone to Pits, that they can come and they're welcome to stay in my home and bring me back some of that serotonin and that dopamine and that this generally good vibe. And
they're here. There's people from California and Ohio and Louisiana, and like it's just crazy to me that we're all reuniting. My cheeks hurt from smiling, and they just got here yesterday, but it literally is my cheeks are hurting from smiling.
You're waiting in line and you meet somebody, and then like next thing you know, you're staying at their house in New York. I mean, I barely met Tammy for like a couple minutes in Mexico, and she opened up her home for us, you know, and we're staying at her house. And this is not the only one. I mean, I'm staying at somebody's house in Boston and Boulder and Montana.
We've never met Tammy before. We have mutual friends who know her, and that's how we even just came to be here, was just the connections of the community and people helping each other out and just being so hospitable and friendly and kind and all the things that the culture of the Grateful Dead stands for.
You had this extended family everywhere you went. You have this common bond, and it doesn't matter whether you are, you know, a person selling T-shirts on the lot for a living, or you're a bond trader. You know, you all have that thing, and on that level, you can get in the same room, and all that other stuff disappears, and you're just people who have a shared joy of kind of a similar thing.
Hey, I'm David Krumholtz. I'm an actor, writer, mostly an actor, and I proudly play in 2 Grateful Dead cover bands in and around New Jersey and lower upstate New York. Late 2014, I moved from Los Angeles to New Jersey. We had a child, and my wife is from New Jersey. Her parents live here. And I got to New Jersey and I freaked out. I didn't feel, you know, it was culture shock, you know, to go from LA to New Jersey. I was glad I was out of LA, but New Jersey kind of, suburban living kind of freaked me out, because I'm originally from Queens, New York, and I didn't know what to do with myself. And so the Facebook events page became really important to me. Like, what is going on near me? And I love live music, and I started to notice that there were more than one, in fact several, Grateful Dead cover bands in my area playing on a weekly basis. And on a weekly basis I could go see any of them. So I went and saw a band called Touch of Grey at a dive bar in Fair Lawn, New Jersey. And they really impressed me. I was just like blown away by them. Going to the shows enough, I got to know the band. And one night, the band, one of the guitarists in the band had trouble singing. He had kind of a scratchy voice. And I was in the crowd just singing to myself. And the band leader's girlfriend was standing near me. And she heard me, and she said, "Can you sing?" And I said, "I've never sung professionally, I don't know, no." And she was like, "Get up there, you sound like you have a good voice." So before you know it, at this tiny little bar in Hawthorne, New Jersey, a place called Shortways, you know, to like 5 people who were left, I sang the last 2 songs of the night. And the band was really impressed, and they kept inviting me to sing with them. And they were really kind to me, and that exposed me to more of the scene. I started to play outside of Bergen County and started to get to know a lot of other people. In the process of being in these bands, I got to know the loveliest group of people I've ever met in my life. And I considered myself very lucky to be part of this massive scene. And yeah, I do it every weekend. I'm in 2 bands. One band's called One Man Gathers, or OMG. And the other band is called Her Angels in Flame. We rock and roll. I play about 4 to 8 shows a month in my off time when I'm not acting, and it's just been a blast. And I've made some absolutely lifelong, beautiful friends.
So Wolfman Jack started almost 4 years ago. We just started out of a need to play. The first couple of times we played together, it just kind of was, what do you know? What can we play? What's on the list that everybody knows? But then it was maybe our 3rd time that we played, our original Jerry player, Jason Ferguson. We had asked him, so what are we doing today? What are we playing? He's like, well, why don't we just do live Dead and 60s and early Dead, because everybody's doing the later stuff. You know, almost nobody's doing the early stuff. So why don't we focus in on that? And that kind of became our MO for Wolfman Jack.
I gotta get down, I gotta get down, I gotta get down to the
Primal Dead is just kind of like a term for it, but what we're really diving into is the difference that era of music provided. You know, the blues music in the midst of psychedelic chaos, like the 11.
There's also a really, unique form of exploration and full band improvisation that they, continued to do after that, but not quite in the same way. So playing songs like Dark Star, the way that it was sort of done in that time frame is, I think, just like a great joy.
We largely focus on the late 60s Pigpen era, but it's kind of expanded as late as 72. So solidly in the Pigpen era. So we'll say, tonight we're 71-ish, 72-ish.
There's kind of a museum piece quality that, it has a high level of seriousness for how you treat the art.
Everyone is essentially leading. Everyone is essentially having something to say and playing their own solo, much like Dixieland Jazz would. But to do so without stepping on everybody's toes, to work cooperatively within that non-spoken conversation between instruments.
The big balls, man. Can't you hear me when I call? Big balls, man. Can't you hear me when I call? Well, you ain't so big. You just told, that's just about all. Well, you got me working, boss man, working all around the clock. I want a little drink of whiskey now. The show only pulled by stop. Oh, the big balls, man. Can't you hear me when I call? Cause you ain't something you just told, that's just about all. on that night called a baseball stand. Can't you hear me when I call? Cause you ain't something. You just told, that's just about all.
Hey, I'm Jay Ferris. I'm a musician, guitar tech, social media account runner, and just nerd. That's me. Since early childhood memories, like I remember this Jerry guitar sound and like wanting to know how that was done and accomplished. Junior year of college, I started gigging, and that meant, you know, playing in a wedding band pretty much every weekend. And like, it's funny because you're in a wedding band, you're probably not playing that many Grateful Dead songs. You know, you buy an amp and you're like, does this sound like Jerry? Nope, sell it. And then, so as I'm gigging, I get, you know, a show every weekend where I get to figure out if I sound like Jerry yet. and knowing absolutely nothing, you know, I was just kind of shooting blind, like, let's try this. And I made a video for YouTube, and it got a lot of views, I remember. And it was me thinking I'd figured it out because I just bought a JBL speaker, you know? And I was like, 5 tips to improve your Jerry Garcia guitar tone. And I remember telling people like, hey, I'm gonna actually learn this stuff and like figure it out, and then sort of return to a public face when I feel like I've got a better grip on things. And so yeah, I just talked to experts for 5 years, 6 years. I had heard this one video on YouTube, and it was a Waldo mod. And I was like, who's Waldo? Because whatever that is, like I heard the Jerry tone, like I unquestionably heard it. I need to know how to meet this person. And basically all I would hear was like, oh, Waldo's pretty, like, you know, he's pretty reclusive. My friend said, hey man, I showed Waldo your band. He really likes you guys. You should chat. He said he might be able to mod one more preamp for you, because he, you know, his books were shut at the time. And I was like, what? I'll always remember that feeling. You play the first notes, and it was just pure magic. You know, Waldo's such an interesting guy because he's a veteran, Marine, working on the railroad. And this has just been this obsessive search for him. So here we are, present day. Waldo and I have talked every day for 6 years now. He kind of got to a point last year where he's like, oh man, this, like, just there's a huge influx of people trying to learn, and if you're only one guy, you can only give out so much, and if you've got a family, working a day job, it's tough to give that side of yourself. So he's always been sort of on and off with how much he's digging into the information. We got to talking about like, hey, I like dealing with people, you know, I'm a social or socials guy, and what if, you know, would you allow me to sort of take this information to a new audience, a younger audience? Waldo was like, yeah, let's have you sell my buffers. I don't know, it sort of happened magically. Like I was just starting a website to sell local guitar repair services. And then that very quickly turned into like, oh, I'll sell your I'll call it Jerry Tone Store. And then I made my first video, which was just clicking through the Jerry rig things, because there's a lot of buttons on these pieces of equipment. And that got like 230,000 views on TikTok. And all of a sudden there were followers. The explosion was ridiculous. Like it went from maybe a Facebook forum of 1,000, 2,000 people that are clearly very excited about this stuff, to now there's 20,000 people that I kind of have access to in terms, they want to know about the rig, they want to know about the gear, They might play a Jerry in a cover band. They might play in their bedroom only. They might be touring professional. Like, it's unmatched. Like, the people that are interested in this fascinate me. And so I think the core element is everybody believes in this little bit of magic that the Grateful Dead created.
Y'all make welcome on the bass guitar. He's gonna sing this next number for you. That's Samson Grisman from Mill Valley, California.
She went down to a tailor shop and dressed in men's array. She climbed aboard a vessel to convey herself away. Oh, convey herself away.
I'm Sam Grisman. I grew up in Mill Valley, California in the early 90s. My father's David Grisman, and he and Jerry made lots of music together in that period.
Their newest CD is called Not for Kids Only. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome David Grisman and Jerry Garcia. Guys!
Almost trailed by 20 pounds. Didn't get to sleep that night till the morning came around. Set out running, but I take my time. Friend of the devil is a friend of mine. I get home before daylight, just might get some sleep tonight.
My dad and Jerry connected in the early 60s before the Grateful Dead existed through their shared passion for bluegrass music. By the late 60s, he was thinking about moving to the West Coast, and by the time he moved west, the Grateful Dead had already formed, and they were recording American Beauty at the time. They invited him to come to the session and record on Friend of the Devil and Ripple. In 1990, the year that I was born, that was the year that my dad and Jerry kind of reconnected and started gathering at my house and recording music in the basement there in my dad's studio. I was lucky enough to just grow up in this incredibly rich musical environment where Jerry was just one of my dad's best friends who used to come over to the house to make music fairly often. I had no conception of his significance in the community of the Grateful Dead or the larger musician community. He was just a dear family friend who would come over and have fun with my dad. Some of those memories are some of my earliest musical memories. Jerry's friendship with my father had a profound impact and showed me how much fun music could be, and working on and arranging and developing and writing music with your friends could be a lifelong pursuit. We figured assembling a group of our dearest friends to honor some of that music and to also provide a platform for us to play some original music would be a pretty righteous thing to do in the spirit of those guys and continuing their legacy.
Come again. Walking along in the mission in the rain. Come again.
A lot of it is just about playing the music that we love, you know, for people who love that music. And as long as we love that music and we love each other, you know, it all translates, and that to me is sort of the essence of the Grateful Dead. You know, they were such an amazing teaching force and exposed so many people to so many great kinds of music and so many great musicians in so many different ways. And, you know, that's the inspiration for me, is to try to do that in my own way and showcase the community of musicians that have come into my life and, you know, made me the person who I am. And so I'm, you know, just trying to play music and have a good time, and, you know, share that joy with people in hopes that it leaves a positive impact.
And come back for a whole nother set of music. Thank you guys for listening. Really appreciate you. We love it here.
You know, in the early 70s, you know, the Dead were growing quickly. They were playing larger and larger venues. The weakest part of any concert back then was the sound, particularly in a large venue. So they were trying to find a way, being, you know, they were really perfectionists, even though I don't think people credit them for that, you know, at least from their sound perspective. So they were trying to find a way to deliver much better quality sound to a much larger audience.
And so they built this
great wall of sound.
It was literally about creating optimal sound by just stacking as many speakers like as humanly possible up vertically, and they tied it down to make sure it didn't blow over and kill everyone.
And it only lasted a year. It was just too much work, too cumbersome, too much to tear down and set up every night.
And what Anthony's done many years later is create an exact replica to scale.
I started building just as a hobby for myself, and building guitars that were kind of in that Grateful Dead family of instruments, and always wanted to build a wall of sound on some level, because I do make speaker cabinets for musicians that are wall of sound styles cabinets for their instruments. So it just seemed like every time I would build a batch of 30 or 40 cabinets, they'd all be stacked up in my shop, and I kept looking at them saying, I don't know why I don't just keep going and finish building the whole wall. So I started working on this smaller model for fun and to test the waters and see if people really cared about it. Made a Facebook page for it just for fun. I figured I'd have a couple hundred kind of people that geek out over this stuff like me who follow along. But it took off pretty quickly. A lot more people are fascinated by the wall than you would have expected. The first one was I think I called it 1/6 scale, but the truth is it's 1 to 6, not 1/6. So I did everything kind of based on speaker size. So in the 1/6 scale, a 12-inch speaker was a 2-inch speaker. That got so much attention that I immediately started the next one. And so when I got to the 1 to 4 scale, that one was the first, what I would consider more hi-fi oriented system.
When he brought the miniature version of the wall of sound to Garcia's, I believe it was at the quarter scale size. And we built it on the stage here in Garcia's, and it went to the ceiling, all the way up to the ceiling. And we weren't sure it was gonna fit. It took a couple visits. We deemed it was gonna fit, and it did, thank goodness. It was a true exhibit that the fans, all the fans that came through, wanted to just walk up and look at it and really take it all in.
He's the type of person that he'll call you up and he'll say, like, I want to rebuild the wall of sound.
I try to envision, how do I make it act like the wall, sound like the wall, but be more flexible in terms of how you use it.
He doesn't ask himself like, well, would this be hard, Because otherwise he would never do anything. Like, everything he does is difficult.
And that's kind of, brings you to here. I mean, functionally works exactly the same way as the wall of sound. I could take a multi-track recording. So let's say I had a full set of multi-track recordings from a 1974 wall of sound show. And I could say, send Jerry over to just his speakers, send Phil just to his speakers. And you could do sort of a virtual sound check of a wall of sound show. So now people can get in front of a half-scale wall of sound and hear it exactly as they would have heard it through a wall.
I got the pleasure of getting to go down there and test it out with my brother, who has passed, Jason Ferguson.
I mean, it looked amazing for starters, just walking in the room and seeing that.
I think I cried a little bit. I don't think it was like bawling, but I think I had some tears in my eyes. And I'm like, what have you done?
It was fun. I really had a great time. I'm so glad they asked me to do it.
So in the Grateful Dead terminology, this column here is purely Jerry Garcia. That's the only thing that was coming out of here. The second column, you had the bottom 3 speakers that were all vocals. And that wasn't for the audience. Those were really for people performing on stage who couldn't hear the vocals. Then the top 5 speakers of the second column are all the drums, mids and highs. Next column over was the, I get 2 of these mixed up. Just the kick drum, I believe, was the next column over. So nothing but kick. Then this tall one here, the tallest stack, is Phil Lesch's column, so just bass guitar. And he had 2, the 2 tallest, so the left and right tall columns are just for bass guitar. And they are divided into 4 sections. 9 speakers on the bottom, 9 on the top, and same on the other side. So Phil could use his quad bass and send each string to its own 9 speakers if they wanted to. I think that was a short-lived experiment. It wasn't really used all the time, but it was a great concept where now not only do you not have multiple instruments coming through a speaker, but you literally have just one sound coming through a speaker at any given time. So if you played a chord, you could hear different elements of that chord coming through different parts of Phil's speakers. Next column were all the vocal lows. It's the vocal lows and the kick. Sometimes I reverse them, but anyway, vocal just low end. Then the last column on the left side here is just Bob Weir, so just rhythm guitar. Over here, the center column was all vocals. So all your vocal highs and mids were coming out of the center column. And that was, the majority of the vocal sound. The rest was really more for people on stage. Back over here, as I said, we got more Phil. Bottom 3 here were vocals again. Top 5 were drums. And then everything over here is the piano. So you've got, or whatever the keyboard setup was. So you've got your low end, your mids, and your highs. We start over on the left. I can hear Jerry Garcia coming just out of the left speakers. And if I wanted to add in Bobby, now he's coming just out of here. And if I add Phil in, add the drums in. Now we've got our keyboards, which I'm trying to bring in here. And then we'll add our vocals. So that's the whole band right now. Make sure I have my keys coming through.
Anthony's an amazingly talented guy and a genius by all means. He's a luthier, he creates amazing guitars, and he's also got kind of a crazy idea that he can recreate the wall of sound, which is insane, man. I love it.
So Anthony is a fabulous guitar builder, fabulous mad scientist of all types of things.
He's a genius. He's a mad genius. Actually, he's a mad scientist, but yeah, he saw the wall of sound as something that he wanted to see.
From the time I started the 1 to 4 scale, the smaller one, from the time I started that, I knew that the end game was to rebuild the full scale wall of sound. So, I do have a vision for how I see that playing out. I'd like to see a full scale wall that is in a combination museum/music venue. So, I keep saying that my idea would be to rebuild like the Winterland somewhere on the Northeast, because that's where I'm from. Find an old abandoned, skating rink and convert it to a music venue / Grateful Dead museum / museum to just modern sound reinforcement kind of thing.
He has built a lot of gear for us Jerry nerds, and now with his wall project, full scale is the goal. I think he's going to get there. And he's helping recreate the magic. It goes back to all of us believing in that magic. He's doing it.
Yeah. There's so many ways that the Grateful Dead, the music, the culture, the ideology, just the essence has impacted people's lives. Whether it's a Grateful Dead sneaker, or all the posters that are there, or someone like Anthony making a mini wall of sound, and there's just a lot of, it seems to grow. Just when you're like, I can't imagine something more. You'll see a fancy designer make a cashmere sweater or dress out of the, Steely, or a dancing bear. And you'll see LeBron James, wearing Dead sneakers, or there's just so many touch points and creativity that comes out of it. And Anthony building the mini wall of sound. It's hard to find new ones, new paths that no one's done before. And Anthony, no one had created the real wall of sound replica, but Anthony did.
Bill Graham has a very famous quote. They're not the best at what they do, they're the only ones that do what they do.
Each show being different, I think it's a big part of it, even whether it's a cover band or the Dead, you're playing, it's never the same. So even when something, a musical performance is amazing, but it's the same every night, you kind of know what's coming, and not knowing what's coming, not knowing how it's going to be performed, sometimes it's not great. But waiting for it to be great, and then when it's great, it's like, bam. You know, that's magic.
I think this music means a lot to a lot of people, and we wouldn't have a venue to play if people weren't thirsty for it. You know, there's a lot of people that want to hear this music live. They want to hear it go on. They want to hear it live forever because it meant the world to them. It gave them a reason to live to some extent.
The roots are so deep. And I liken the Grateful Dead and this community to the giant willow tree that's standing in the middle of a field that you could see for miles away. And there's fields and fields and fields, and there's a giant tree. You want to see what that tree's all about. And you see other people going towards that tree, and there's a lot of fun and positivity swirling around that huge tree that must have really deep roots, right? That's the only way a tree grows that big. So you follow, you go along. You're like, oh, there's a lot of positivity happening there. Let me see what it's all about. Let me dip a toe. And they dip a toe, and if you feel that energy and it agrees with what's going on inside your heart and soul, you're gonna become part of it. And those roots are so deep, and that tree is so tall, that we're lucky enough to be able to, you know, continue hanging and partying around the tree, and that tree is the Grateful Dead, right?
They've always been willing to take risks musically, and we've, as Deadheads, have always been willing to go on that ride with them, hoping that we get to touch that magic. Because you know what happens when you touch magic? You have a better life. Your experiences are better. You can just stay at home and watch television on Netflix, or you can buy the ticket and go to the show to have the experience that'll be with you for the rest of your life. Because that show on Netflix will still be on next week.
Something about live music, and especially in an age when we're all on these screens, I think you need that live experience even more. That real world, like, wow, more, because we're all day like this. And that probably is even more of a need for that than when the Dead were here.
There's magic in it. I can't explain it. Was Jerry an angel? Was he channeling something? Possibly, you know.
The way I see it, and I may be crazy, I think the Grateful Dead tapped into something that's primitive, that's been around since humans have existed. It's this language that everyone can understand. I mean, you go to Japan nowadays and you can see a Grateful Dead cover band, and the people playing don't even know what the words mean, but they know what it means, you know?
Why doesn't Mozart fade away, you know? I mean, when you create something great that's, you know, really magical and unique, the people are going to follow it forever.
This was an incredibly unique thing that connected people, and that connection is an energy that's so strong that I don't see that really ever ending.
One of the most important things is the magic. And there's been so much of it. We've got it banked in jars and jars and jars. And little by little, it's gonna seep out. And someday when you guys have kids, those stories are gonna go to those kids, and you're gonna put on a live cut from a show you were at, or a live cut from 77 or 73 or 67. And your kids are gonna be like, what the is this? That just blew my mind. That just blew my mind. And as long as our minds are blown, we will love this music forever.
And they will not fade away, you can count on it.